Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Channel 781 candidate interview. I am here with Waltham mayoral candidate Jonathan Paz.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Jonathan Paz is in his second term on the Waltham City Council representing Ward 9, and he is challenging our current mayor, who has been in office for almost 20 years. This time 2 years ago before the election, it didn't seem like there was a lot of buzz around the election. That has changed for this election. There seems to be a lot more people engaged this year, and I think it has a lot to do with this race has really caught people's attention. So I'm really happy to have you here. We've interviewed you once before on councilor stuff, but this is our first time talking to you as a mayoral candidate. So the first question is, do you think you can win and why?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could definitely win. We've knocked on over 20,000 doors. We're working hard to not just hit the pavement, but also having a very robust digital program. So we've been getting our word out, sharing our vision, and making sure that people really know what's at stake. It's one thing to have those numbers. It's another thing to see the excitement on the ground. I think people are looking for something more. They're excited for change. I think there's a lot of respect for the mayor. I think that people recognize that, but I think people know that 20 years is a long time. And it's a harder case to be made as an incumbent of 20 years. So we're very much excited. And I also do think people are excited about the vision that we're setting to the public. I mean, we're talking about moving Waltham forward. We're talking about making sure we're modernizing our city services, our public transit, creating an actual plan for housing that values our communities, but make sure that we're not allowing luxury developments to just price everybody out. And I think people are excited that we want to have a more transparent process around our community farm, our open spaces. So I think the message is getting out there. I think the excitement is there. We just need to work for it.
So a lot of our audience knows what you're about, but for those who are just meeting you for the first time, can you try to make it easy for them? Can you say what are your top 3 priorities or the top 3 issues that are motivating you to run?
Yeah, so we need to make our roads safer. We need to modernize our public transit, make sure that we're incentivizing people to actually use our new train station that I envision to have a train station that isn't just a wooden platform. We talk about the need to protect people from the elements, incentivizing people to get on a train if they're coming in and out of town. We talk about synchronizing our traffic control systems. Our traffic lights need to talk to each other. We just need to make sure that we're cutting down on the congestion in whatever way possible and providing reliable alternatives to just driving a car. I talk about making our schools more competitive. We need to do right by our students. What good is it to have beautiful parks and new buildings if we don't have the adequate people in place to make sure that our students have a inclusive, competitive education? So that means more project-based learning, a larger focus on STEM, and ensuring that we create a pipeline to these career vocational programs. So I think the high school can be an amazing opportunity to reshuffle some of our schools, learn from the past, but look towards the future. And lastly, I talk about a robust planning department. A lot of our issues stem from the lack of proper planning. We've kind of made it a very known issue now because we talk about it at the doors. We need to proactively and not just reactively maintain our basic infrastructure, our roads, our sidewalks, our municipal buildings. We're kind of stuck in this cycle of putting out fires. And I think by actually having the right people in place, actually hiring a new planning director, we can not only have a better process, a more transparent process, we can actually go after state money, federal money for climate resilience projects. A lot of it stems from a need for a master plan. So I covered a lot of ground there, but I'm trying to do my best.
Let me ask you about the schools. I'm not sure everyone knows. In Waltham, the mayor is automatically a member of the school committee. Then the mayor plays a big role in the development of both the school budget and the city budget. If you were on the school committee, what would you do differently? And what would your priorities be for the schools?
I think we need to hire the best superintendent for the job, and we need to make sure that they stay longer than a term. In the past 16 years, no superintendent has stayed longer than a term. I don't think that's adequate. I don't think that's responsible. And we need to do right by whatever leadership we bring on board. I want to actually empower the school committee. I don't need to be this overlooking presence in the school committee. I'm a facilitator by trade. You help facilitate good conversations. You create some parameters where there needs to be. But I think that's why we have an elected school committee. We have this terrible reputation of being like bottom 10 ranked schools across the state. I think these rankings are problematic, but they have some truth to them. And I think that there are very practical steps we haven't been taking to actually make sure all students have opportunities to succeed.
So you had transit, you had schools, and you had Planning, yes. So yeah, let me ask you about transit. Bikes are an issue that motivate a lot of people. How do bikes fit into transit?
Bikes are important. We love bikers. We love bikes. I think that there's an important opportunity to have both your cake and eat it. I think if you encourage people to use bikes and provide safe bike infrastructure in the city, people will notice that you're incentivizing people to get their cars off the road. We can make sure that we have proper bike lanes where it makes sense, but we're also investing and partnering with Blue Bikes to continue the Blue Bike network. You should be able to take your bike on the Riverwalk all the way to Watertown, all the way to Boston, and leave a bike there. And if you want, take the train back. There's multimodal opportunities here. This is not a zero-sum game between cars and bikes. We can actually make sure that there's an adequate pathway to safe infrastructure around bikes.
Also, you said in your answer about improving the train station. Is that something you would work with the MBTA on, or how would you make that happen?
So my second resolution in the council, I said, let's not wait. I mean, the MBTA absolutely has a role in helping us secure more reliable public transit. But we can't wait. And I think a train station is long overdue. It creates an atmosphere. It protects people from the elements. I just think it's a no-brainer. I grew up here. I've seen that wooden platform for a long time, and it's always been an eyesore. I think that there's a very modest investment we can make to provide, at least on the Carter Street and maybe on the other side when people are coming back. Let's incentivize. Let's make taking the train a little bit more attractive and palatable to your average commuter.
So we've got a good summary of what you stand for. I want to give a chance to talk about your background too. Can you walk us through your involvement in the Waltham community so far, and what are you most proud of?
Yeah, so I am a proud Southsider of Waltham, but I've been in the board of the YMCA this year. I'm part of the advisory board of Waltham Family Schools. I also happen to be in the city council, and I am an on and off volunteer with Healthy Waltham. I love to support the Waltham Land Trust. I'm a community organizer. I always try to show up for the community. Doesn't matter if it's formal or informal. I try to be there for the people. I try to just be engaged. One of my proudest achievements this year, I'm a new board member of the Waltham Y. I felt like I was maybe not going to be the greatest board member because I was running for office, but I still was able to secure over $6,000 in donations for the Y, especially in a time when they're trying to get more youth to get these swim lessons. So I felt a very personal connection to that because I never had formal instruction in swimming. I almost actually drowned in the Connor playground pool. Fun story. But, I never had this fear, but I never really, I guess, had instilled in me this value of like formal swimming instructions. So to think that we can promote that across the city for our youth it makes the job that much more fun.
And what about it in your work as a counselor? What are you most proud of so far?
I look at some of the literature that I campaigned on and seeing us move the needle forward on so many issues, from housing, elevating housing, tenant notifications, basic protections for tenants, right? Talking about protecting the environment. I championed a tree protection ordinance that would have actually created a fund for us to pay for people to plant their trees. And I'm very proud of, I always talked about revitalizing the downtown. Well, we closed down Moody Street and created a pedestrianized market. And, if you were to talk to people, survey people in the South Side, you would tell that people loved it. There are its issues. It's not a perfect idea. We need to set it up for success, not set it up to fail. But I'm very proud that we were able to do that, saving some of our businesses, but also promoting people to, get out into the streets, get out of the internet and come hang out with your neighbors, have a meal. So I think that's been a transformation in the South Side where you see a lot of people get involved, whether it's Waltham Mutual Aid or it's people actively now with Waltham Critical Mass actively promoting the use of bike safety. I think we've activated a lot of people coming out of COVID and maybe that's an intangible, but it's definitely something that I'm really proud of.
So you mentioned the tenant notification ordinance. So I definitely want to ask you about that because it's something that's been talked about a lot and associated with you a lot, even though there have been many people involved in it. And I want to ask you actually about that because we've talked about it a lot on our show. It came from Watch CDC. And then it was talked about as an ordinance, but it came in as a resolution. So I was wondering if you could tell a little bit more about how that got started.
We knew that during COVID, there was a lot of housing insecurity. There were people who were missing rent, lost their jobs. Homeowners were struggling to pay their mortgage. People were struggling to not get evicted. So I started with a resolution to just investigate what's been the displacement. And lo and behold, Watch was already convening a group of people to talk about a very practical idea, which would have been a basic housing notification. So these two things are happening concurrently because Watch organizes people. People were struggling to not get evicted. So we invite them to the council and they talk about the need for tenant notification. I punted from one committee to the other to the Rules and Ordinances Committee, and I made my intentions transparently clear. I said, we need to investigate this. It's a win-win-win for the people by not only creating a piece of paper, on one side that says these are your rights, and on the other side, these are local resources. It benefits everyone because if we have one standard, we can make sure that people don't have to go that far in the process where they're falling behind rent, where they're finally in an eviction process. And this is one of the main takeaways we got from this committee, we got from Watch, and we got from the public at large, is that people do not know where the resources are. In general, it's just a reality that there isn't a lot of ways that we consolidate good information at the right point in time. So to make a long story short, there were a lot of legislative games played by some people who clearly oppose it. I had to represent it as an ordinance. Again, I think it was legislative machinations that were at play. It wasn't a serious process. But when I finally resubmitted it as an ordinance, we were forced to have a public hearing. There was a lot of misinformation spread before that public hearing. So if you're a landlord and you're watching this, my message to you is that a piece of paper should not threaten you. It should actually empower you to provide good information to your tenant about how they can actually get you rent, because there's a myriad of programs at the state level, at the local level. The city was giving out money at one point. Watch was giving money at one point. The state had a lot of emergency money. So it just benefits everyone when we all know where to find the money, where to find the resources. So we had a very public hearing, and you can tell that there were people who came into that hearing completely misinformed. You would have thought that the whole world was falling apart, that they were completely just mischaracterizing the very essence legally and also symbolically of what that housing notification would do. So that's what we're going up against, is we need to educate people, but make sure that we're having a honest conversation about what this is really about.
Yeah, I thought what really got lost in some of the conversations was there were people asking, what is the need for this? Like it was a rhetorical question. But in fact, it came out of a need that was recognized by the same group that's connecting people to money to pay their landlords, was saying this isn't working because they don't have the info. That actually leads in well to the next question, which is, what are the biggest barriers to change in Waltham in general? And if you get the job, what are going to be your biggest barriers to doing the job you want to do?
There's there's technical issues, but then there's more nuanced issues that are very complicated, unprecedented in our time. Something that I would love to make sure that we're doing politically, but also on a practical level, is switching mindsets. We need two things. We can't, as a city, continue talking and working with the public as if Waltham can't learn from its neighbors, from people in Somerville to Cambridge to Boston, as if there's some derogatory bias there. There's 350 towns and cities in Massachusetts. It's okay to trade notes. So we need to end this isolationist mindset that seems to really be entrenched in the leadership of our city. And that also, you can see that in City Hall with some of our municipal workers, not all of them. But there is this mindset that our sense of pride, which I think can be a good thing to make us resilient and loving people. Our pride, like we are Waltham, should be a good thing. It shouldn't be pride in the sense of we cannot learn from others because we know everything, right? That is something that's a difficulty. It's an intangible, it's a cultural thing, and it's hard to go up against. But yeah, the whole second thing, it's kind of connected is, we can't hold on to the past. What worked in the 80s, and I heard the 80s were a great time, but what worked in the 80s doesn't work now. And I get that there's like a generational shift, and there's like people who feel threatened by that. And, I'm part of a younger generation, and, we should embrace the passing of the torch. We shouldn't have to preserve the torch and never think that we can't learn from something new in this new moment in time. And we're going to pay for it. If we hold on to the past, we cannot look to the future. So it's okay to learn from the past, but we need to have our mindset towards the future because we are seeing more complicated issues and we need to adapt and evolve.
So you're talking about bringing a very different mindset and representing a younger generation. What if people unite against you and make it impossible for you to do anything? How do you handle that situation?
Well, I think that you try to build coalitions where you can. You try to find common ground where you can. I think that if we win, we try to make sure that we encourage people to reset. We can't hold on to old gripes and grievances. We should see this as a momentous opportunity to move the conversation forward. Now, there needs to be adjustments at City Hall. We will make them in earnest, but I think, politically speaking, people will be held accountable. There's councilors, school committee members, electeds in general who try and put politics over people. The electorate is going to hear about it. Like, this continues. We are not permanently, the same way I wouldn't be permanently elected. No one's permanently elected. So that accountability mechanism is in place for a reason, but I'm happy to work across whatever ideological differences or biases exist. But the reality is we need to move our city forward. We need to be more competitive when it comes to being a more attractive place to work. We have a high attrition rate in our schools. We just had a very public process where 63 votes happened and we couldn't land on an interim superintendent. Where's the newspaper covering that? I know you guys are, but that's huge because it's a public process. People are watching that. People do their homework. So for people to have seen that 63 votes reach an impasse and we still don't move forward with any of those finalists, we need to change the reputation of the city, change the culture. I'm not saying radical changes across the board. I'm saying very practical changes at a mature level and move the conversation forward.
One final question. You are running as part of a team or maybe a slate or maybe a cabal, some people might say. But yes, you have several people on your literature who are supporting each other. So can you tell us why you decided to do it that way and tell us a little bit about who those people are?
First and foremost, I think they're great people who have amazing values. We have shared values and very much qualified for the job. So they stand alone as fantastic candidates. We work together as a team. I don't exactly call it a slate. There's a few practical reasons why to do that. Number one, we are very publicly challenging the establishment, right? And very publicly, that's a very difficult thing to do, right? You're challenging incumbents. They work together. They just don't talk about it. They don't publicize it. Right. But we are a cabal, right? Like we are very publicly saying we share similar values, we share a similar vision, and we are all independently qualified for whatever job we want to pursue. So it's tough when you do challenge the establishment. They have this thing where they project their own insecurities on the conversation, but they work together. I'm not going to name names, but they work together and they share notes. They trade lies that they spread and they see what works on people. So it's a little bit ridiculous that, people who are being transparent are being accused of non-transparency because we're very publicly working together. We can't play these high school level games. We're here to serve the people and move the city forward. Now, who are they? First and foremost, my colleague in the council, Colleen Bradley MacArthur, who is a councilor at large, a phenomenal human being, I think a very powerful advocate and mom. Number two, Emma Sumas, a public health expert, a mom in the South Side. She has kids in the dual language schools. Again, maybe overly qualified for the job, and also a mom. And Tammy Wong Bigelow, right? So she's running for school committee. She's an educational consultant. I think that she's one of the brightest people when it comes to actually thinking about new approaches to education, making it more inclusive. And I also want to mention, I am endorsing Eamon Doss for Ward 9. He's fantastic. He's up and coming. He's already a seasoned leader in the South Side, who does a lot of critical advocacy for safer bike infrastructure. But he's also just in tune with everything. He shows up everywhere. And he, I think, can do a great job continuing the work that we've done in Ward 9. And lastly, Lizzie Gels. Lizzie is a phenomenal human being with very strong values. She's going to be a strong communicator. I think she's going to be someone who people can rely on to actually not raise their taxes in Ward 1. She will support the residential tax exemption, which the Ward 1 incumbent has been voting against repeatedly. So, you know, these people, I think, are forward-looking. They're not, you know, your establishment kind of candidate. No one here had their parents, you know, be previous elected officials. They didn't get their clout from their family. It's tough when you're challenging the establishment, but it's okay to work together, and we're supposed to be able to do that. And I want to mention just one last thing. Massachusetts is a uniquely difficult place to challenge incumbents. We are unique across the whole country where incumbents are automatically at the top of the ballot in the general election. That is unique to Massachusetts. And then number two, just to think about this, in 2022, 60% of Beacon Hill lawmakers faced no re-election challenges in November 8th of last year. We have a low rate of electoral turnover. We don't have term limits. So the next best thing is elections. And elections are already very difficult places to navigate, but they're also very expensive. So if you think about it, it behooves us to work together if we share similar values, because again, the financial hurdle is the reason why you don't see more people run for office. You have to go out of your way to raise money. And it's particularly hard for parents who have to cover childcare expenses because they can't use campaign contributions in Massachusetts. This is a known issue, and it's unfortunate, but if you're trying to move the needle, it behooves you to work together, and you might as well be transparent about it, because it can make it more affordable. It can make it more accessible. And yeah, there's beauty in collaborating. We're very proud of the race that we've run. We've been running on talking about leadership differences and public policies. We try to keep things above, we don't punch below the waistline, if you will. So our campaign, we've been constantly accused of crazy things, labeled a lot of things. But what I tell my supporters is that we show respect to our opposition. We don't create crazy conspiracy theories. We don't lie. So I just wanted to share that on the record, that there are people that we have, maybe are supporters of our opponents, who don't show that side. But what you see on social media is not representative of the majority of Waltham. I think a lot of people in Waltham are very down-to-earth people. They can disagree kindly. And so the stuff that you see on Facebook or all these other places, believe it or not, it's just very, very few individuals with maybe too much time on their hands. There's beauty to this. It's okay to knock on doors and make new friends. Even if you don't agree, it's worth it. People should run for office and have a good time doing it.
Jonathan Paz, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. And thanks for all that you guys do. It's amazing. And please keep it up. We need it.
So you can check out our other interviews with candidates at our YouTube channel. And don't forget to vote on November 7th, which is less than a week away. Thank you very much.
Thank you.